So Trump's, in his recent campaign, has been talking about how to end the Ukraine war so that Russia can be won over to the US side, and then China will be isolated. So this is a very, very interesting mindset. This is a mission impossible. It's very difficult, if not impossible, to divide Russia from China. I think it's a surprise for me to watch Trump's inauguration speech that he did not even mention a single word about Russia, about Putin. He basically bypassed entire Russia or Ukraine issue. The only foreign policy issue that he highlighted is Panama Canal. He talked teasingly about a Gulf of Mexican, should be renamed as a Gulf American. But my feeling is perhaps the reason why he did not mention is because private discussions ongoing and between Trump, his team, and the Russian side. The only thing he mentioned about China is when he talked about the Panama Canal. He talked about how the canal is operated by the Chinese, but this is not true. I think it's not the case. And the Panamanian side denied this many times. There's no Chinese hand in the operation of Panama Canal. So he didn't mention at all Russia and Putin. So I think something is being worked out. But Trump seemed to have far more humanitarianism regarding the casualties of war. It's totally different from the Biden administration rushing arms and aid to Ukraine in the last few days, even in the last hour. Who cares about the death of the Ukrainians? The whole generation of men is being wiped out. For what reason? To win the war against nuclearized Russia? It's not a joke. It's not something that you're talking about the winning a war in the age of nuclear weapons of mass destruction. So he's far more peaceful than the outgoing Biden administration. And surprisingly, he didn't talk about it at all. So this is my guess. And I believe in his 100 days, something may happen or will happen between Trump and the Russian side. Whether he would meet Putin before or after President Xi Jinping is another question. But I think he's trying both. And this is something quite different, very different from the Biden administration. So Trump's, in his recent campaign, has been talking about how to end the Ukraine war so that Russia can be won over to the US side, and then China will be isolated. So this is a very, very interesting mindset. As far back as to 2015, many Americans, academia, think tank people, started talking about how to take Russia away from China or try to find the so-called drivers of Russian-China strategic partnership and how to drive a wedge into this strategic relationship so that China will be isolated. Once Trump is in office, the so-called dividing Russia from China has become kind of like a policy. And so it's very clear. And this may be the reason why the Democrats or liberals accuse Trump of too close to Putin's Russia. So this has been an issue, but very consistently, Russia has been a lesser issue perhaps than China. I myself was invited to join this research program led by Professor Robert Sutter of Georgetown University in 2016. And several Chinese and Russian scholars too were invited. And we tried our best to tell them this is a mission impossible because Russia and China basically has a very strong internal or bilateral dynamics between themselves. And that both sides learned the lessons of going to confrontation over the differences about ideology. The end of ideology between Russia and China bilateral relations perhaps has a profound impact on the current strategic partnership relation or normal relationship between Russia and China. And previously, from the beginning of the diplomatic relations, Sino-Soviet relation has been oscillated between honeymoon and hostilities. 10 years of alliance between 1949 and 1959, and quickly replaced by the 30 years of hostility. from 1960, when Khrushchev suddenly withdrew all Soviet economic and military assistance to China, and then all the way till 1989, when Gorbachev finally in Beijing normalized relations. I think these are the terrible lessons, and both sides paid huge cost to this kind of like a hostility, or I will use the word divorce, of 30 years between 1959 to 1989. So both sides try to normalize relationship and to put relationship on the basis of pragmatism without the interference of ideology. Who is more Marxism than others? So that's the whole thing during the 60s and 70s. So the two sides decided to turn the page and to normal relationship. I think the West and the US in particular, I do not think they understand this historical development. And particularly China and Russia realize the key to stabilize relationship on a pragmatic basis is to solve the centuries-long border issue. Russian-China border now is about 4,000 kilometers long. It used to be 7,000 kilometers long during the Cold War, when today's Central Asian states were part of the former Soviet Union. Now it's still the longest borderline. So I think there were lots of internal dynamics between China and Russia, and also consensus to normalize, to stabilize relationship between two sides. And there are lots of problems between China and Russia today, but these problems were not politicized as much as US-China relations. Almost everything is politicized, everything. China has been demonized to such a state that I think is totally unrecognizable now by the mainstream media in the West. So Russian-China relations has been far more pragmatic and normal. Normal in a sense is not a military alliance, which means automatic locking up mechanism in times of war. Russia and China are two large independent powers, have their independent foreign policy, independent defense policy, and respect each other's interests. So that's what I see. It's very difficult, if not impossible, to divide Russia from China, at least not in the foreseeable future.